Hello, I am Tony Gleekmeister, and tonight we are going to be discussing buying a house with my co-host, Rick Schumeyer. He is now in an elevator right now. Let's go to him now.
Thanks, Tony. As you said, we're going to start with a few basics of buying a home. So let's take a look at the facts. Tony, when you're young and buying a home, the sky's the limit. That's just simply not true. Rule number 2 for first-time buyers: no slacking at any time. Tu eres responsable por tus pobres acciones. Tony, the first thing we want to talk about is a down payment. As you know, the more you put down, the less you'll have to pay in the future. Make a down payment. Tony, what we want to remember about making a down payment is the more you put down at the beginning, the less you're going to have to pay off at the end. Interest rates, of course. The good down payment size would be about 20%. Refinancing. It makes sense when you can lower your costs before you sell, as well as lowering your interest rates by at least 2%. It's a general rule. You want to move from an adjustable rate mortgage to a fixed rate mortgage. When you're going from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage, if you have a good interest rate, you don't want to change. Now let's take a look and see how real estate savvy some of the teachers at Crossroads are. And so do you feel that a fixed rate mortgage is the best way to go?
No mortgage is the best way to go. We own our home outright, so I'm pretty happy about that. We've never had mortgage payments.
Oh gosh, like I didn't know anything.
Are you recording?
Yeah. Oh. I did rent, yes.
Can you give us kind of the breakdown of buying versus renting and when one's better than the other, in your situation, when one is more
Oh, when I
feasible?
think it is?
Right.
Well, obviously renting is not your own. You like to have your own thing. Probably renting is best when you're new to an area. You don't want to jump in and just buy a house you might not like later, or the area. 2, if your job is unstable, let's say that you're new to your work, probably renting is a good idea until you can afford something and your budget's down, and you probably should have that 20% down payment. Speaking of experience of not having it and having a down payment, it's way easier having the down payment. 1, to get financed, and 2, for your monthly bills.
We also interviewed a few people off the streets of Big Rapids. Let's see what they had to say. Oh. You, sir, would you have a fixed or adjustable rate mortgage? What was your first time experience like?
I got an adjustable rate mortgage.
Do you have any advice for the first time home buyer?
All right, thank you so much. Well,
Today we have real estate expert Ross Meads on the line with us. How are you, Ross?
How am I today? It's always nice when it's Friday. I can't argue that. But as days go, today's been a pretty good day.
All right, the first question I want to touch base with you is, how do you feel about buying versus renting a home?
I guess my same as whether you want to invest money or burn money. To me, I understand that there are times when renting is necessary, but when you rent, at the end of the month, the money's gone. You never see it again. You haven't gotten anything for it. If a person can afford to buy, they are investing in something that later they should be able to get money out of, even though there is interest on top of it. But even though there's some interest, some is going towards principal, so you are generating an investment rather than simply putting money out. Now, the other thing is, with renting, you always have someone who supposedly is supposed to take care of any problems you have, so that's a nice part about renting. When you own, all those problems are yours. But generally, 99% of the time, I would say you're better off buying and owning than you are renting.
Now, Mr. Principal, I understand that you have been a builder yourself and built your own home. What does that entail?
When we decided that we wanted to move down in this area, while I built my home for about 16 months, we rented. And after my earlier comment, let me explain why. We rented because it was a half mile from the house I was building, as opposed to the distance between Paris and Cadillac. I would not have been able to build the house I built had I still been living in Cadillac, even though I had owned that home, because the time travel and the distance. Many times I would go home to the rental house, have supper, and then go over and spend 4 or 5 hours till 1, 2 in the morning working on my house, which I never could have had I still been lived in the house we owned. So in that case, we rented while I built the house. But basically, our entire married life, which is over 25 years now, or will be 25 years next year, we have owned every house we lived in, other than the one rental.
Did you go with a 15 or 30-year mortgage?
If at all possible, number one, I would never go over 30. But if at all possible, I would lock myself into a 15. The reason I say that is the best intentions of mice and men never come through. So you get a 30 intending to pay like it's a 15, unless you're forced to by having to make the payment. Most people don't. But there is no question that even if you do get a 30, when you look at the amount of savings you make making extra payments, you ought to treat it like it's 15. But my advice to anybody buying a home was, if at all possible you can, and I would scrimp and save other areas, but get into a 15 because the amount of interest you save on it.
Am I your favorite student?
Parents are asked all the time who their favorite child is, and it would be only a foolish parent that would answer that question.
It's a simple question, Mr. Means.
So, in response to all the other hearts I would break if I mentioned who my favorite student is, I'm not going to do that.
Fixed or adjustable rate?
I'm going to talk as somebody who's been in both. Right now is a great time to be an adjustable rate mortgage. They are lower than any fixed rates you can get. However, we hope and pray that the housing market isn't going to stay as bad as it is right now for very long. And so if you're an adjustable rate mortgage, very quickly those rates are going to go up. The other thing is, you're not in control of that. With a fixed rate mortgage, you know exactly what you're going to pay the entire length of time of the loan. I realize adjustable rate is attractive at times, but I would always recommend a fixed rate for somebody who wants a mortgage.
Do you like cheese, Mr. Principal?
May I ask where that question comes from?
Now, we all know that the moon isn't actually made of cheese, but if it was made of spare ribs, would you eat it?
If anything were made of spare ribs, I'd probably eat it. Because spare ribs happens to be something
It's
I
a
enjoy.
simple question, Mr. Principal. Would you eat the moon if it was made of spare ribs?
If the base of that question is, do I like spare ribs? Yes, I like spare ribs.
Can you give us some advice for the first-time buyer?
Buy within your means. I know of houses, and we joked about it, but I know of beautiful houses with no furniture in them because people can't afford, after they're paying their mortgage, to put anything into the homes. Be willing to sacrifice. Particularly most of the time, first-time home buyers are young. Be willing to sacrifice a little bit. Don't live in the perfect place and hook yourself up with a mortgage that you can't pay. Get a smaller mortgage, sacrifice a little bit, fix something up. Another great way of increasing asset right away is buy something that you might not want to live in, but that you're willing to do the work to fix up. And then by doing that, you increase the value of your property, and then you can turn around and sell that and put down an investment and a down payment on something that you do want. But the saddest thing I see is people in their first home wanting to buy their ultimate home right away and getting a mortgage that they can afford, and either they end up losing the house or they sacrifice every other area of their house or every other area of their lives because they've overbought on a house.
Mr. Principal, I've always wanted to ask this, and the people want to know. Do you, in fact, have beaver fever?
You want to know? Somebody once said that you can bathe a pig and put a ribbon on it, but it's still a pig.
Well, that's enlightening. They'll be glad to hear that. All right, Ross, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for the interview. We'll stay in touch. I'll probably see you in your office.